Hi. Okay, I'd like to welcome Sarah today. Sarah's in Australia. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing really well, thank you so much. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. So we're going to talk today about some of your amazing adventures you've been having. Paddling, as I say, Paddle Australia on your hoodie there. But yeah. So, but I think it's safe to say you're an all-round adventurer. But certainly these last 12, 18 months, you've had some amazing journeys under your belt. So yeah. So thank you for joining us today. So am I right in saying then last year then, so you paddled the Nile? Is that the first big paddle you've done, or have you done some things before that?
It had all been competition based. I'd never done sort of expedition or even, adventure based kayaking. It had been, I got into it when after joining North Bondi Surf Club. So I started off as a surf lifesaver, suddenly you find all these new sports, and did the swimming, that was fine, then did board, and then got into these, what we call the surf skis, which are the long, narrow sit-on kayaks that you go in and out through the surf. And then started getting into Iron Woman, which is you sort of bring all of that together, and then Coolangatta Gold, which is sort of endurance, and then flicked over to the ocean skis, which are a similar shape to the surf skis. They're just a little bit longer and they kind of cut through the water a bit better, but they're not designed to go in and out through the surf. But what you do with those is it tends to be longer races. And I'm very much endurance athlete. So that really, really suited me. But yeah, until I'd done the Nile, then no, I had done nothing like that at all.
Yeah, no, that's true. The Nile is unique, but that sounds like you've got an awful lot of experience then. So have you been into swimming and life saving and stuff? Was that something you started at an earlier age then, that you're always active as a child?
Yeah, massively. And I mean, I grew up in the UK and down near Brighton in Hove, and my grandmother, as a baby, would take me into the sea. Like, she loved swimming. And yeah, so I'd always grown up, learned to swim really young, then did squad, and then moved out to Australia. That's when I got involved and I did other water sports, water skiing, windsurfing. Yeah, I've done a lot of that. And yeah, and then got into the surf lifesaving, which it's been fantastic. I love that.
Cool. So definitely an active lady then. That's I was looking on the website. We've got the website link below. People can check out all your adventures and the newsletter and Instagram and stuff like that. There's some amazing pictures on there. Definitely recommend people have a look. But it was a bit making me smile. It was basically changing from a corporate job to what shall I do next? I'll paddle the Nile. So you were definitely an active person then anyway. It wasn't that you'd gone from couch potato to I'm going to paddle the Nile. This is it.
No, I mean, there had been sort of steps and then one giant leap to get me down the Nile. I've always enjoyed some more adventurous holidays, and I've done, like, horse riding was my first love when it came to sport. So I've been to Africa a couple of times. I did horse safari across Namibia, another one across the Namibian desert, and another some more traditional safari, but also on horseback. So it's been a bit of time in Africa. Always loved Africa, and yeah, then when I came up with the idea of sort of bringing, a continent that I love to go to along with the sport I really love, yeah, I was really excited about it.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That kind of answers the next question then. So why the Nile? But yeah, that's good. So how did you even go about getting started? What kind of research did you do, or did you use local teams? Like, what were your next steps in getting going with that?
Yeah, when I came up with the idea, I mean, it was the whole idea. I was inspired by a couple of people who I saw had gone on expeditions, who weren't your sort of explorers, ex-military, Bear Grylls sort of types who you could see have been doing things like this since they were kids. There were a couple of ordinary people who went on expeditions, and that really sparked something in me. It's like suddenly I could see what I wanted to be. And then I did the research to go, well, what do I want to do? Came up with the Nile, and then, yeah, it was, how on earth do I do this? Because there's no wiki. with 10 steps to, you know, how to organize an expedition, let alone an expedition through Africa. So I read a couple of books. So one was by a guy called Henry Coetzee, I think I pronounced his surname right, who is an South African whitewater kayaker and rafter, and with a group they did an expedition from Ginger in Uganda to the Mediterranean. And then he and another guy, Pete Meredith, who was on that trip, they did from the source back to Uganda. Henry, sadly, is no longer with us, but Pete Meredith is and has been involved in organising a lot of expeditions, been on a lot of expeditions, has worked through in Ginger for a long time as a rafting and whitewater kayak guide. So I reached out to him, and he basically gave me the bare bones of what needed to be done, which was like the backbone of the project plan. And luckily I'm a project manager and risk manager by trade. So I've started to be able to build out the plan of working out what needed to be done, from logistics, what craft, how many people, what skills, how to engage the governments, what, you know, all the different types of equipment, you know, and what training I needed to do. So it was a very, very steep learning curve, but it was so much fun, and I completely underestimated how enjoyable that would be. I mean, it was really stressful at times, but it was most of the time, yeah, it was enjoyable. And just suddenly having this direction, like I'd never had before. You know, I'd had direction with my training and my racing, but this was just something else. And yeah, it was good. And then building the website and social media and brands and all of that. It was it was about 2 years of planning, and kind of got there eventually.
Yeah, that's nice to hear that you enjoyed the process. It was fun planning it out, and well, it sounds like you've got a natural skill for that anyway, and like you say, your profession. But that's good. You don't hear often that side of journeys. You hear a lot about the journey itself, and yeah, not the kind of lead up, or as if that bit's just an admin burden. So, but no, that's all part of it. It's so I was going to ask you where you started then, because so the source of the Nile is there's several sources, isn't there, across Africa. So you mentioned Ginger. I've been to Ginger, and when I was there, they was confidently told that's the source of the Nile, but that's not where you started. It's
no, and for a long time that was sort of seen as being the source of the Nile, but then various expeditions and trips have sort of said that it's down to sort of two places. So either Rwanda in the Nwenge forest, or some people say in Burundi. Generally, at the moment, the consensus seems to be Rwanda in Nwenge. So I went with that one, but actually flew into Ginger because I'd done a short recce there. Actually, when on the back of the trip across Namibia, I thought I should probably go and have a look at the Nile before committing to going down it. So I went there to spend a few days, 4 days, whitewater kayaking and chatting to people. So I kind of built a few contacts there. So went there. I didn't actually have the team. I really struggled to find people with the right skill set and the flexibility to join the trip, because I couldn't say exactly when I was going, exactly how long it was going to take. And most people obviously can't be that flexible, but luckily when I got there, I managed to find 3 local rafting guides, Ugandan guys, and it was all trying to organise the food and what to take. Again, it was all quite stressful. And then getting to the source, so then I hired a car and we loaded up all the gear, borrowed the gear that was lent to us very kindly by Nile River Explorers. Drove. We had so many car problems on the way to the source. I think it was 3 cars and 4 drivers, or 4 cars and 5. It was one disaster after the other. It felt like it was like this last test of, are you sure you really want to do this? But then we were guided in and we hiked into the source in the Nwenge forest. And I'd seen all these pictures of next to the source, there's this sort of slightly faded green sign with yellow writing on it saying, this is the source of the Nile. And we hiked in, beautiful forest, about 45 minutes, and turned this corner. And suddenly there was this sign. That sign had been on my vision board and my focus for like 2 years and 2.5 years since I come up with the idea. Suddenly being there was just it was just an amazing feeling. It really was. It was like, wow, you know, okay, we haven't hit the water yet, but yeah, this is actually happening. You know, the dream is suddenly becoming a reality.
Yeah.
It was really cool. It was really, really good. And then we couldn't actually put in there because we were starting off in the raft. Some people in the past also started off in walked down, followed the source, got in kayaks, and then the raft, but it just wasn't practical for me to be able to do that. So the next day we actually got to a point where we could put the raft in.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. Like, all the locals we were next to this bridge, and they were all on the bridge watching it, and just this spectacle unfolding in front of them, like this strange craft, as we then have to inflate the raft, load everything up onto it, the frame and the oars, barrels with food in, and the electrical items, our camping gear. And yeah, then finally it was time to launch, and me and the 3 boys, we got on the river. It was the 27th of October 2018 at 11:32, because I took a look at the watch. It was like, it happened. And finally my first stroke at the start of the expedition. So yeah, it was another incredible moment. And then we just had all these kids running along the river next to us for, it would have been about like 5-10 kilometers. Like, they were with us for so long and cheering and laughing. It was just like having this, you know, set off crowd, you know, there to cheer us. It was amazing.
That's special. That's so nice. That's so good that you went up to the source as well. Like you say, you hiked in. It's not that you just went to the first point that's possible to get in the boat. Like you say, you actually went to the top and the side, and that was, like I say, it must have been quite emotional with all the planning, and then you actually get there and see it, and it actually really exists, and the sign's still there, and, and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, thank goodness it's actually real.
I didn't just make this up.
Oh, that's good. There's a million and one questions. Like I say, I'm sure you could talk for hours about, say, the journey across. I suppose my reference to it is, say, going back to Ginger. So Ginger's Lake Victoria in Uganda, for anyone who's not aware. There's some pretty big rapids there. I think if you were, like you say, you started there and you did your planning from there, to stand and look at the river at that point, I think that would put quite a few people off. But yeah, you had guides and you're all set. And so you actually went all through, paddled the whole stretch, or did you take the boat out and go around certain sections?
There were times we had to portage at times. You know, it was quite tricky through Rwanda and Tanzania, because it's, luckily one of the rafting guys had actually done that stretch, but he'd done that 7 years earlier. So you can't remember where every rapid is. And we had a couple of difficult, like just really awkward portages, and obviously you've got to unload everything and carry everything around. We got into one set of rapids, like we were just at the start of it, but there was this thick papyrus, and so we couldn't get off. There was no way we were going to be able to portage. And we had with us a creek boat, so a kayak that then one of the boys, Koa, would be, he was our safety kayaker. So he went, there were three channels to choose from, and he had a look at 2 of them. He's like, they are not runnable. What we could see of the channel on the left was what we could see was runnable. I mean, I had a horrible feeling if those 2 weren't, the chance of this one just being a nice little gentle was unlikely. And so we go along and we get around this corner, and there is just this water gushing over this massive drop. My stomach just dropped. It was the things I was really scared of were hippos, crocodiles, and big rapids were kind of like my 3 big fears. Because having seen those rapids like they got at Ginger, and one of them's called the Dead Dutchman, and you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to work out why it got that name. So coming around and seeing this, I tried to stood up at one point. The guy in the oars, Peter, thought I was getting up to hug him or something, and I was like, no, I was having a look to see if I could jump off the back of the raft to the edge. Which was a really deeply flawed plan. Like, I don't react particularly well under extreme stress like that, acute stress. And Koa just screamed at me, "Get down!" Because I'd gone on one of the, the commercial trips that they run down from Ginger every day. I'd done one of those just to get a feel for it, get a feel for what they will say, forward, back, get down, blah blah blah, which was really valuable. So when Koa screamed at me, "Sarah, get down," I knew what to do. So me and Paolo got down at the front. Literally, as we went vertical over this drop. went underwater. The whole thing buckled, and because I could feel the weight of the food barrel, one of the food barrels on my head. And luckily then it sprung up, like we didn't flip. I'm amazed we didn't flip. Wow. Peter got thrown out. We're then careering through these rapids. I'm trying to get a throw bag to Peter. Paola's and screaming, get down, because of these low branches coming to take the back of my head off. I'm the only one with a paddle left, and then I'm like trying to get us to the side. When we hit some flat enough water, we managed to get Peter back in. But it was one of those things, like when we got through it and we were fine, we were all on this massive adrenaline high. And it was actually one of the best days. And we had that night, we found this, we finished a bit early, found this perfect camp spot, which was just your typical scene of sort of East Africa with the umbrella trees and just rolling hills. Yeah, it was a really special day.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Like I said, sometimes it can be like that. Like you said, the adrenaline and the fear but yeah, then yeah, perfect. It's I'm glad you all got through that bit. I know at Ginger, you'll have seen them. There's local boys swim down the rapids, don't they? They get the tourists to pay them to swim down them. I was like, I'll pay you not to swim down that. You know, it's like being a lifesaver and watching what they're doing. It's like, what are you doing? It just, I wouldn't even comprehend getting in there to swim down. But yeah, tourists were paying them to do it. So yeah, it's mad. So you mentioned hippos, crocodiles, and rapids. So you've encountered rapids. Any hippos?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, we were always going to see them, and it wasn't an if, it was a when. And it was actually, we got to them a bit sooner than we were expecting, day 6. So we literally, we were just getting into our swing of things. We woke up in the morning and heard a hippo making its way upstream. Oh. So we were all a bit like, oh, there's this sort of apprehension, tension in the air as we got on the water. It wasn't long before we got to our first pod of hippos. Generally, everyone had said to me, and Pete, who'd been mentoring me through this, when you're dealing with hippos, give them a wide berth as you're approaching where you think you might be hippos. Use your paddle, bang the top of the water. They'll pop up to see what it is, and then you can avoid them. The problem here is that the river was quite narrow and really windy with some sort of short, steep banks, so you couldn't see what was ahead. So we got around the first ones okay, saw our first croc, which was quite big, and then we were coming up to a sort of a left with then a right after in the river, and as we're coming around the left, we see a baby popping up in the left-hand corner. So we all stopped paddling. And it was literally before I could even get the words, "Where's mum?" out. She then, because the river's taking us, like we haven't completely stopped. She pops up on the right, and then we've drifted between her and the like, one rule of dealing with hippos: do not get between the mum and the bub. So she lost it, right? We are then quick on the oars, on the paddles, because we had 2 of us up front paddling and 1 person on the oars and 1 sitting at the back. Paola, who was sitting at the back, leapt, I think, over Cora's head and got to the front. Peter and I are paddling, desperately trying to get away from her. She caught up because they're quick. She put her head on and she tried to flip us, but because you've got 4 people in there, all the gear, the frame and everything, it was pretty heavy, so she couldn't. Oh, so she stopped, and then we're trying to get away and trying to get to the riverbank so we can just get off. And then I just felt this sort of tug back, and I looked behind me, and she'd bitten into the back of the raft. So literally I turned around and there's this hippo attached to the raft. It was just,
I should laugh.
No, laugh about it. And it was just, it's not often that you get real primal fear. And that time, in the rapids, was just that pure primal fear response. You just don't normally, it's not that often you get it. No. Luckily, I don't know, we think maybe because it might have popped a bit, because obviously, it's a blown up raft and all the air rushing out, or maybe because she realised she was a little bit away from the barb, she luckily she backed off, which gave us enough time. We were pretty close to the bank by then to get to the bank, get off, wait till she sort of chilled out a little bit to then unload the raft, pull the raft out. And then the boys spent like an hour and a half, maybe longer, than patching it to put a really strong patch on. So some in the inside and the outside, and gluing it all down. But then the worst bit was, that was day 1 of hippo land, and having to get back on the water, I don't know, I don't think I've ever felt so sort of scared in that sort of primal sense. It was just terrifying, and knowing that we're going to have to deal with more. But Peter was really good. He said, okay, what we'll do going forward, the whole we just go around them isn't necessarily going to work. If we see one, let's stop and get off the river if we can. And we tow the raft in the water past, and then we've just got that space between us and them. And literally that same day we had to do that very, very aggressive male hippo. We came around the corner and we got off, and he put on this psychotic display, like the opening and closing of the jaws, huffing, puffing, jumping up and down, scattering excrement with his tail. I'm a hippo body language expert, but I think he was basically saying, I'm going to get on my river, I am going to rip you to pieces. So yeah, I don't like hippos.
No. And it's such bad luck as well. Like you say, you're trying to be conscious of them, respectful, stay out of the way, and then, like you said, the river's taking you, and how do you know there's a mum one side and a baby the other side, and you just, it's just bad luck in that respect. It's funny because say I saw them up in Murchison, and they can just be so peaceful. They weren't bothered at all. There's obviously boats go up and down there all the time, but you're in a solid wooden boat as well, which is a big difference to an inflatable raft. But they just look so peaceful, and there's like little birds sit on the top of them and things like that. And say again the crocs, but then, like I said, the power of them if you get too close or if they're not in the right mood, and it's it's wow. Okay, so crocodiles then. You said you saw a crocodile. Any close?
Yeah, we saw a few crocs. Didn't have any problems with the crocs. I mean, once we got into croc territory and hippo territory, we just had to modify things a little bit at night. If we could, we would put a barrier up using like the rope from a throw bag or something well, of course, that meant a hippo could get through it. Apparently they've got quite sensitive skin, and they're generally, if there's something in the way, they're not going to try. They're not like elephants who will trample. And then once we were in our tents at night, there was no getting out. You're staying there until the morning, because it would be, with the crocs. And, sometimes you'd hear the hippos grazing because they get out to graze at night, and you'd hear, like once we heard them, they were grazing not too far away from us. So you stay in your tent.
Yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, most big adventures, like you say, it's all about the actual activity, and so by the sounds of it, so it's a lot of what's going around you in Africa. It's everything that's going on, so with the animals and so your biggest challenge in a way wasn't the paddling in lots of respects. Like, so it's the animals and the environment and the camping and dealing with all that, and imagine a huge amount of the planning went into that side of it rather than the paddling. It's
there was and preparation wise, I mean, obviously I've got a decent base kayaking, but the preparation was all around the risk planning and the training on the back of that. So I did things like Krav Maga self-defense training, wilderness survival, remote first aid, and hostile environment awareness training. So those were things taking into account and looking at what I was getting into. How do I give myself the best chance of surviving that? And some things, there was one part of it I actually ended up outsourcing. So I knew, having done hostile environment awareness training, obviously you're going through some countries which aren't 100% safe. I didn't have any problems, but you just don't know. So I got engaged a company that gave me super detailed intel reports each day. They also looked at my risk plan. I then checked in with this guy every single day, because I couldn't ask one of my mates, one, to be on the phone for the end of the phone for 6-7 months, two, to be able to come up with the right set of protocols of what to do in emergency. Yeah, I can do that for Australia because it's quite simple, but who you contact when you're dealing in, you can't just Google the local hospital or medical centre because they're not going to be listed.
No.
So by having this guy, he was there to be able to help with any crises that came up. And, we did have some incidents. And then they were also doing things like checking who was following me on social media, to see if there was anyone who was known to be potentially unfriendly. And they were keeping an eye on online chat rooms and places like that for any chat. And there were a couple of people with form for kidnapping talking about me, not in a threatening way, but the fact that they knew about me and what I was doing obviously raised, it just, you had to be on your game a little bit, and just being aware and being smart. It's, it's like being street smart. But it was so valuable to have that support and the confidence it gave me going into this environment, which I hadn't been exposed to before. So for anything like this, the risk management planning is so essential.
Yeah, let's say take it for granted in so many places. Let's say it's all about the water, it's all about the river, and it's all about the river planning, and then so much of that isn't. I mean, like say you get a wonderful image of the children running along the banks with you, being all excited and passing through beautiful idyllic villages, in the mountains. But then, like you say, there's a darker side to some places too. So it's yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're okay. What about the people then? Did you manage to meet people? Were people intrigued with what you were doing? It's like, oh, is it hard when you're on?
Definitely intrigued by what we were doing, and I think the people were one of the big highlights. It helped massively. I very deliberately had local teams because I felt there was a chance of having that sort of richer cultural experience. If you're 5 foreigners together, you're going to be received slightly differently than you are as one person on their own with local people. A couple of real highlights sort of towards the north of Uganda, going across Lake Choga. It was really difficult to get off the lake because you've got the thick papyrus, and you'd occasionally have, and through Google images, Google Maps, you could see these like slight dark channels, and you'd see the villages, and all the fishermen would go down these cutout channels onto the lake. And one time we had to leave the raft on the lake, tie it to the papyrus, take what we needed, got someone from the village to come and act as security, and then a couple of fishermen to take us down into the village. And it was like sort of going into like Nile, suddenly this whole village opens up in front of you as the papyrus sort of separates and the channel widens. And this hive of activity, and we were invited. Each of the villages and towns has a chairman, and it's a little bit like the chairman. You've probably met some of them, I'm sure, while you're over in Uganda. So it's literally like the chairman of a company, and he has his executive, and it's law and order that doesn't need to go to involve the police, local projects, dealing with minor bits and pieces. And the chairman very kindly invited us to stay. And we were sitting outside the house waiting. They were like sort of preparing it for us, and you can see, I think the granddaughter, she was like hiding on one of his granddaughters. Anyway, he pulled her by the hand, like gently pulled her by the hand over to come and see us, and she had her little hands over her eyes in that kind of, if I can't see you, you can't see me. She'd only been about, I don't know, maybe 6 years old, and when they got in front of us, the chairman pried her little hands away from her eyes, and she took one look at me, and she just screamed and ran. And we got to spend the evening with this family, and they fed us. So it was a really special experience. And then the same in Sudan, the hospitality in Sudan. Oh my goodness, I love the Sudanese people. They are the kindest, most generous people I've ever met. Like, the rowing and canoe club there just went out of their way to help me and give me local paddlers and get the approvals and everything I needed. We got hosted one night, so a complete stranger again invited us into the home and fed us and gave us beds. And I could have been hosted every night through Sudan, because that's just what they do. If there is a stranger, a traveller, you give them a bed. And these are people with nothing, and they would just give you everything they had. They would just, it was, I don't know, you just get a whole new perspective on so many things. It was amazing. I love Sudan.
Oh, that sounds good. Like you say, it's amazing what people you come across in that respect. I know certainly having blonde hair and blue eyes, I've made a few babies cry in Africa. They take one look at you and cry. I remember it happening on It happened on a minibus once for me, and this baby cried the whole journey next to me, and it's like I can't go anywhere. So yeah,
Oh,
I mean, there's probably 101, but at the same time, I just wanted to ask you about any moments kind of on the river, just kind of any real special moments, you know, with the paddling, anything that kind of stands out for you, or is there just too many to mention?
yeah, I mean, obviously there's a few. You know, it was a journey of sort of two halves in a way. You had the real adventure and all the drama that we had in the first section, and you could never really relax. Like there were some nice bits where we knew we could relax, and there weren't crocs and hippos, and you could go for a swim, which was lovely. But generally, you're just always on alert. But you have beautiful scenery. I mean, one night we climbed up this bank, found somewhere to camp, and just overlooking this high, because we were high up, and just watching the river and the suns, you know, those beautiful sunsets that you get in Africa. But what really stood out for me was once we was kayaking in Sudan, and as you get a bit further north, you start paddling through the Sahara, and it was just these breathtaking, kind of surreal moments where you realize, you know, you are literally paddling on a river through the world's biggest hot desert, and you've got sand dunes coming down to the water's edge, and the color of the sand was beautiful. It's really beautiful, soft yellow. And just paddling along next to that, particularly through the north of Sudan, it was beautiful, beautiful scenery.
Yeah. Ah, that sounds magic. How long did it take you, the whole, from start to finish?
Look, I was in from the day I landed in Ginger until I finished was about 7 months, just under 7 months, but it was not all on the river. So I sort of did the prep for the first section, and we did from the source back to Ginger, prep for then the next section, which was from Ginger up to the border with South Sudan, back to Ginger for Christmas because there were delays in visas getting approved for Sudan. Small section in Sudan, prep, another prep section finished, then prep. So there was, I don't think I ever really worked out exactly what the split was, water and planning, but it did create quite a lot because I was just doing it on my own and didn't have like big teams sort of helping and trying to do it on a bit of a budget. It just didn't really work out that well, but it was worth it.
I'm sure. That's interesting. Yeah. So yeah, just logistically, yeah, you do have to do it in sections. It's not you get in with your boat in the source and carry on right down to Egypt non-stop. It's a process.
Unless you've got a team behind you, you've engaged a company, you know, who will do all that project planning for you, then which you can do, which is great. But I don't know. I think that for me, because I enjoy the planning, and while there were a lot of obstacles and challenges to overcome, you kind of get a bit of a kick out of it, and you know, the sense of achievement that you get from having done it all yourself. For me, it was worth some of the pain, particularly in retrospect. Possibly there were times at the time where I was like, I really wish someone would organise this, but yeah, it's good to do. Learned so much.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as you said it, I thought it makes it more real in a way. It was your journey and you did all of it and you were involved in every bit. Like you say, you haven't just hired a company to guide you down, and which would still be an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Not taking anything out of that, but like you say, you were the pioneer, and to be the pioneer and do it, you've got to do it in chunks, because you don't know what you're going to face. You literally don't know what's around the next corner. So it's literally like hippos or crocs or rapids or beautiful sand dunes. It's
yeah.
That's nice. How did you feel when it was over? Were you disappointed, or was it like, yeah, thank goodness, or a mixture of all feelings? Or
all of the above. It was kind of like this whirlpool of emotion. So yeah, I was stoked to have got to the end, really happy. So there was that real happiness and joy, a massive amount of relief, and just sort of no more having to deal with the uncertainty, because having dealt with uncertainty for so long in some pretty intense situations, and all the problem solving, I was ready to get to the end and not have to deal with that anymore. But then also sad to be saying goodbye to that beautiful, beautiful river, and that suddenly this thing that had been my purpose for and directed me for 2 years was finished. But I'd say overall it was positive, and I was happy. You know, people said, "Oh, you're going to get the post-expedition blues." No, you know, as much as I loved it, I think because it took quite a long time, I was ready to sit on the couch.
Yeah.
And I went to my last 5 weeks and got fed by mum.
Yeah,
Thanks you all for that.
That's what I imagined you'd say, just listening to the story, like you say, because one of the things that comes through is you don't not many chances to relax. You're always prepared, you're always on edge, so it must be like euphoric, and like you say, the adrenaline rush is massive, but at the same time must be exhausting as well. At the same time, you're just constantly, I suppose, you're operating on survival mode all the time, aren't you? It's kind of going back.
And then there was that you kind of start to get risk weary, and your risk of making mistakes and things. That's kind of, because you can't stay. It's hard to stay in that sort of slightly heightened state all the time and always be on the lookout. It's easy to then become complacent. But yeah, I was ready for a break from all that uncertainty, and it was emotionally it was tiring. It was exhausting, and it didn't help. I got food poisoning, like what was supposed to be my last day, and ended up in hospital on a drip. And I've managed to get through the whole trip without getting sick. I've had a jigger, which had to be, you know, the parasites that get under your skin. I had to have one of those dug out, but otherwise my health had been fine. So then having to be in hospital on a drip, it was like, oh, is that really, do we need another test before I make it to the end? But anyway, made for another good story, another story for the book.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations! It's an amazing achievement. And am I right in thinking so you were the first female-led expedition down the Nile?
Yeah. I think there's potentially some other firsts in it. I don't know. You know, to begin with, the ego kind of attracted me to it because of the potential firsts that were attached to it. Actually, when I started getting into it, it was a lot more than that. If it had all been ego-led, then it would have been much, much harder to do, but it was all about the adventure and the journey and overcoming all these challenges and getting that sense of achievement. But yeah, Pete Meredith said to me, he said, well, you're the first woman to have led an expedition down the Nile. So it's like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I'll take that.
Take that one. Oh, definitely be proud of that one. Definitely. It's that's cool. But then you didn't stop there. You went back to Australia and decided to do some more.
Yeah, that's my good taste for it then.
You must have some level of the blues then. You were like, what?
Well, I think it was because I confidently knew, I know I'm going to be doing something else, and I'm not quite sure what. So, yeah, I finished the Nile 21st of April, and then I decided, I don't know when I decided, it would probably been about August time, I decided to do the Murray. July, August time. Yeah, July maybe I decided that I was going to do the Murray. I spent July in Uganda trying to have a crack at writing the book, came back and then started organising that and set off on, I think it was the 14th of December. So it wasn't that long to turn it around. But the thing is, if I hadn't done the Nile, the Murray would have taken me so much longer to organise, and I would have been really nervous doing it, particularly than going on my own. Obviously, you know, it's like that whole thing, you get outside your comfort zone, your world becomes a bigger place. And having done the Nile, you know, my boundaries have been expanded enormously. So suddenly doing the Murray, well, it was still very challenging and came with its own risk profile. It was far more achievable. And it's like, yeah, I know how to do the risk plan. I've got a lot of the kit. I know what kit I do need. I know what kind of craft is going to work. And it's doing it in your home country. There's no visas. There's no currency exchanges. I use my phone. I go to the ATM. It's the food I know I want. So from, you know, what it's doing, it's a challenge. A lot of the complexities of the Nile were taken away. And yeah, you know, you've got snakes, and there was some slightly difficult water situations, but it was a lot simpler. So
the Murray's the longest in Australia, that's correct.
Yes.
And so where does that start and finish then? Where did that journey take you?
So it starts in Kosciuszko National Park, which is in New South Wales, and then it forms the border between, from that point, from New South Wales and between Victoria, it's the border up till you get to South Australia, and then you're effectively heading northwest, and then you start heading south or southwest into headwinds all the way, which wasn't fun. I had a lot of headwinds on the Nile as well. So it was the total trip was 2,500 k's. So again, you had to hike into the source, but I had someone guide me because I'm not an experienced bushwalker, and it was quite difficult to find the source. And then we followed the river along for a couple of days. Right. Then I still got to go back and do a section, because what would normally be a whitewater section, the water levels were so low because we just had a massive, we were coming towards the end, luckily, but we were in a massive drought, and hence all the fires, which were horrific. So did that 4 days with those guys, and then I got in my kayak, which is basically a sea kayak, and then I was on my own. So the majority of it, like over 2,400 k's, I was on my own. Wow. And dealing with, to start with, some really low water levels. So I just had to keep getting out, dragging the kayak, get back in it. And it was tough going. It was tough. But yeah, as I say, different sort of challenge.
And did you see any of the fires as part of that journey? Did you manage to escape them?
I was just enough in front of them. So Kosciuszko did get hit after I'd been through there. And then there was one section, the fires actually came down to the river and jumped where I'd been. So I was just constantly there. We've got apps here, so you can keep an eye on where the fires are. I'd spoken to some mates who are firefighters to sort of know what's the best thing to do if there's a fire, and kind of have my plan of attack. And again, for this one, I did actually check in with a mate each day. I didn't need to engage another company, but I had a friend who, to begin with, I check in with her morning and night, because and I used my GPS or the sat phone because I was out of mobile range quite a bit, and just keeping an eye out on what was happening as far as the fires were concerned.
Yeah, very devastating. It's good you missed it, but yeah, it's not good for the country.
Right.
And you just finished it just before lockdown happened as well. You just managed to squeeze it in.
Good timing. Oh my word. Yeah. I finished on the 14th of Feb, and then it was around about the 20th or 25th of March we went into lockdown here. So yeah, it was really lucky timing. So fortunate.
And there's no way you could ever have known that, because it's just surprised everybody. It's just pure luck in that respect. And now you get a chance to rest and recuperate again, whether you wanted to or not, in lockdown.
Yeah, which has probably been good for me. And yeah, I was gutted. We were really lucky here. Our restrictions weren't as bad as you had in the UK. And so I was able to go out kayaking. I was out on my surf ski and ocean ski a lot. Couldn't go to the gym, but yeah, it probably wasn't a bad thing for the body to have a real rest from that and the real endurance stuff, and just doing some padding for fitness, but just taking it a little bit easier and cutting back on the endurance. The body is amazing how it responds and it adapts, but kind of got to be kind to it and give it a little bit of TLC occasionally.
Yeah. Amazing stories. Changing topic slightly, I mean, if you don't have an answer, it's fine, but we've been asking people we've been chatting to about just what the water means to them, what particularly attracts you to the water. I mean, you mentioned doing the surf lifesaving and stuff as well, so it's obviously something you've got a passionate about. But is there anything special that the water does for you and makes you feel, or do you know what it is that attracts you to it, or is it just love adventure of all types?
It's probably going to be a mix of all of the above. I mean, I think there's no other feeling when you look out over water. There's just a feeling of peace and calm, certainly that I get. And having grown up next to the water or close to it, it's just always been a part of my life. And yeah, it's just that beautiful feeling, and the feeling of being in the water, and the energy that's in there, whether it's white water, a river, flowing, the waves, the surf here, getting to feel that energy, and the fun of being able to use that energy, whether it's to surf waves on or catch body surf, but then it's something that you have to respect so much. You don't know. And yeah, it's fun, it's adventure, it's peace, it's a happy place. It's one of my happy places.
I love that energy. And I mean, it, but yeah, you just sum that up really, really nicely. Like you said, the water's got such an energy in all different ways, like you say, from white water to just floating and being at peace and calm. And yeah, that's nice. Oh, well, thank you. I think we'll end on that note, because that's a lovely note to end on. But yeah, thank you very much. As I said, we've got a link to your website, so you've got information on there about adventures you've got coming up as well, and there's a newsletter that people can sign up for. And yeah, so I'm glad you're safe and well at the moment. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what you get up to when you can. Who knows when we can at the moment. But yeah. Yeah.
No, thanks so much for inviting me on. It's been really cool chatting. Thank you.
Cool. Oh, well, thank you. Take care. We'll speak again soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.